Live from CGT Studios in Los Angeles, California, my name is Edward Earl, and welcome to Grow. We are on the set with Lee Sweeney. Lee, thanks for coming out.
Hi, Ed.
ACG Technologies, and we are going to talk about mobilization, which is something that is critical for your business's growth and the success of your organization, especially not just for today, but going forward, because this is kind of the last portion of the West when it's all said and done. And right now it is the Wild West, and most people aren't figured out. So Lee's brought some amazing information that we're going to push to you, and I think you're not only going to learn something, but you're going to find those nuggets that you need to make your organization successful, to make it successful fast, and to make it as profitable as you want to be. So Lee, take it away.
Okay. Thanks, Ed. I'm here with ACG Technologies, and we have partnered kind of with Ed and Rutherford and his team recently in putting this information together. A lot of it comes actually out of the mobile industry that Rutherford and I were a part of, which is interesting, that now is kind of reemerging and in fact re-exploding again.
Absolutely.
And then in part of your organization, in talking about different marketing strategies and what works and the best ways for companies and CEOs to go about marketing their organization, we've kind of arrived independently at much of the information you're going to see. We kind of have arrived at independently of each other. So I think in that part it's very interesting. So we'll go through kind of what I want to start on was kind of how to think about mobilization. And even in putting this information together, Ed, I kind of have changed my thinking about what it is and what it means.
Right.
Seriously, just even from the last few months. Had a picture, but I think I'm hopeful to be able to address how we should think about the marketing challenges in the world as they exist today. It is somewhat of a Wild West. There's a lot of unknowns out there. We hear a lot about social media and internet marketing and traditional marketing and different ways to get our messages across. And the question is, what are the best ways? What does the future hold for us as we try to market and promote our organization? So that's kind of the question we're going to look at. Right. And initially I'm going to kind of actually talk about some things of just how to think about it. So the first part is a little bit of a thinking exercise, if you will, because I think that's what we need to do, is we need to take a step back and think about what the future holds and look at some of the things, and then I think from that we can determine what our organization needs to do.
And Lee, one of the things I wanted to point out too, guys, is that when you look at mobilization, a lot of times the CEOs that are out there, you're not technologically advanced. I mean, yes, you do have your iPhones and your smartphones and your laptops and things like that, but at the same time, this technology has advanced rapidly and it shifts and changes. But the one thing I want to point out is that everything runs in a cycle. So like anything else, you're going to find that there are so many familiarities with what mobilization is as a marketing strategy as compared to the things that you grew up doing in standard print type media. And it's actually been that cycle that makes what we're doing a lot easier for people to understand if you understand it from that vantage point. So go ahead.
Very true, very true. So looking at the kind of the mobile world that we're kind of all being thrust into, it's interesting, being in the mobile industry at its inception, there was definitely an explosive growth. And that kind of leveled out, and I think with the advent of the iPad and iPhones, something changed. There's kind of an earthquake that really is still reverberating through the world, really. Right. And it's not so much the iPad really started it or triggered something. I think it just kind of captured all the forces and harnessed all the forces at work anyway, and I think you'll see that as we go through. So first, talking about some questions. What should we be thinking about mobilization? This is a slide. There's a lot of detail in it, but it's a study that was done recently, and it basically shows in current status what's important for us to, or what is believed to be important to focus on marketing-wise. Right. Now, if you'll look at this slide, Ed, you'll see that social media, email marketing, events and trade shows, lead generation, a lot of the traditional things are at the top of the list.
Yeah.
This is 2011. Okay. Well, what's the point? Well, the point is we're talking about something that's very down on the list actually here in terms of mobilization. Build applications for the web, Web 2.0. So it's quite down on the list, and there's a B2B aspect of that, relatively the same, and business to consumer, relatively the same. So we're going to kind of look at some information that might maybe broaden our thinking a little bit beyond this. But
now, Lee, let me ask you a question real quick. And guys, here's the thing that's dangerous a lot of times about statistics and things that are coming from the industry. You're talking about people who are analysts and at the same time technology guys, but they're not necessarily marketing guys. They don't live and breathe this stuff every day. They're not on the street, knocking on the doors, making the phone calls, sitting in front of the prospect, giving the presentations, actually selling and dragging in the money. So a lot of times what you see is you see social media marketing, analytics, and email marketing at the top of the list, and then you see things like brand awareness campaigns and content creation in the middle. Guys, you need to understand, without brand awareness campaigns and content creation, you don't have any of this stuff.
Right. See, so Ed and I look at this slide, and we see something totally different. Ed is drawn to the brand awareness because that's where he lives, and we're drawn to the web application because that's where we live.
Yeah, because if I create this stuff, I need you guys to accomplish all this other stuff.
Right.
These are the core components,
Right.
but you're finding that the analysts are pushing them way down on the list, and I think part of that has to do with the fact that there's a lack of experience there on making things work, so we're trying to figure that out. And number two, as they're researching you guys, CEOs, business people across the board who don't actually have answers, they're kind of buying into the information and the trends that they've heard, when in reality, there is a kind of a deeper, more contextual format that you need to understand,
Right.
because you're just not realizing a lot of times what's really important.
And you just said it right, Ed. We're kind of believing what we've heard, what we've seen on the news, what's all the rage, or has been. It's kind of not all the rage now, but it was a year ago, right? Social media. Follow us on Twitter on all the news shows.
Right.
So it gets, kind of pushed into our mind that must be really important. So then we go out in our businesses and we start attacking social media and hiring people to do social media for us because it's at the top of the list. Why wouldn't we do it? Right?
Yeah, it's like they say, you talk to anybody that's good at investments, if you're getting your investment advice through Money Magazine, you're already too late.
Right, exactly. And that's kind of the question I'm sort of drawing out here. And like you said, it's always important to question statistics. I think it was Mark Twain that said there's liars, there's damnable liars, and then there's statisticians.
Yeah.
Something like that. You probably remember something like that. In any event, the one question was, with all of this mobilization, will there be a point where it surpasses our desktop, our mobile apps, our iPads, our iPhones? And this was a survey that was done. Thinking, would it be this year, next year, 5 years, or maybe never? And the results were, most common response, never.
Yeah.
Some guesses at when it might happen, when mobilization might overtake our traditional PC. That was the question, right? So again, an interesting thing to think, okay, what do you think? What do we think about what may happen? So that's kind of the question we need to be thinking. Another question is, how much time does the average user spend on their mobile device? Now, young people probably spend a lot more. You can imagine that they would be spending quite a bit of time. Some information just on this to help our mobilization thinking, and I think that's what this is kind of about, is that we see the average person spends almost 2.5 hours, over 2.5 hours a day on their mobile device. That's quite a bit of time. That's, what is it, twice as much as we spend eating, and a third of the time that we spend asleep, we spend on our mobile devices. For some people, it's probably a lot more, but irregardless, that's a lot of time.
Well, and if you look at what the statistics used to be for TV, that's the same stat that we had for television for all those years. It was an average of 2.5 to 4 hours sitting in front of the television.
Very, very similar. Facebook and Twitter and the social media we talked about, still a large part of where we spend our time. About half the time on Twitter, over 1/3 of Facebook's users use mobile to access their Facebook. As we see when we're talking to people on mobile, you see it on their page and so forth. Video is huge, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. I think you'll find some of this interesting too. Uh-oh, we're going into Greek again.
That's okay.
Okay, let's see. What does this say? It's talking about how, is the rest of it in Greek?
No.
Okay. Yes, it is. Yeah, it is.
Okay, we missed some of the
Okay.
slides.
Okay.
It's okay, just go through.
Okay, so I'll kind of draw you to the slides. I think we'll have to supersede the text on it. Let me back up a second. This is an image of a future library where you see kids accessing a wall of iPads in order to learn from. Again, focused on the images. This is an interesting one, Ed. It just talks about mobile web browsing and how that's faster, growing faster than advertising, messaging, and media. And kind of what I drew from that was more people are browsing, looking for things, than advertisers are advertising.
Right.
Which means there's a greater demand for people that are looking on mobile and trying to access mobile than there is for people that are out there.
Yeah.
So that's an opportunity for us to move into the mobile area. Mobile commerce, this is sales through mobile devices. You can see it skyrocketing between now and 2015, and 2015 is kind of the target area we're looking for the next 3, 4, 5 years. But you can see that there's also this CAGR, which is something I kept running across in doing this research, which is compound annual growth rate,
Right.
which is usually used with investments and growth of money, right?
Yep.
But they couldn't even put the growth rates into regular percentage terms. Much of it had to be in compound annual growth rate because it's going that
so fast. Yeah.
This is tablet shipments. Another thing that I found was interesting is that it appears as if the tablet PC, whether it's a Samsung or an iPad, is going to be likely will win out over the iPhone because there's applications and accessibility that we will need and that we want to have on the iPad that we can't quite do everything. We do a lot. We can't quite do everything on the iPhone. So we're seeing tablet growth accelerating even beyond. We've heard of e-commerce, e-business, like we saw in the previous slide. M-commerce is something, so there's a new term being bandied around now that is likely to perhaps win out, which is T-commerce, which is tablet commerce. Here's another one of data usage. This is information that we access through our mobile devices, getting more and more accessibility to data.
And guys, all these stats are coming from sources like Nielsen's and things like that. So
Nielsen,
you understand that these are credible sources for analytics. Okay.
This is an interesting one. This is the cost of mobile data. Thankfully, it's beginning to go down. This is just 2011. So we see the usage goes up, and hopefully the carriers will begin to be able to provide us more and more data and as they get more efficient, and the cost of it should be going down. For those of us who are thinking, well, with this explosion of mobilization of mobile devices and mobile data, my gosh, it could cost a fortune. But the cost of the data delivery should be
about
down.
half of what it was in Q1 of 2010. And guys, understand the trends of technology and communication companies. Those trends are always to come down. Their model has been like that pretty much since the breakup of all the major bell companies and everything else. So that trend will consistently stay the same.
Right. Let's see what's up. Mobile data. These are a couple of really important facts from Cisco. Cisco did really a landmark study mid-year this year on where all this is going. Cisco is kind of one of the key pipelines of the internet, if you will. So tremendous amounts of internet traffic flow through Cisco.
Right.
And so it's beholden on them to understand what was happening. So these are facts that are coming in this next couple of slides from Cisco, talking about the data increase in 2015 to be 92%. And again, that's not a 92%, but a 92% compound annual growth rate, which translates to about 25 to 26 times the growth from now until 2015. That's staggering.
And guys, it's obvious. You know that if you're on your smartphones, iPhones, whatever those devices are you using. I know from my own personal experience, that thing rarely ever leaves my hand. And it's not just personal stuff, it's business stuff. The more mobilization gets more, not just trendy, but really more prolific, what will end up happening is we'll be able to legitimately break out of our office structure the way that we said we were going to years ago.
Right.
Those virtual organizations, they weren't really supported. We thought that we could do it, but you realize that people they're talking about virtual offices, but everybody's hooked to a landline.
Right.
They're hooked to a PC, a desktop. But now, that's not the case. You know, and I look at one of the things that I decided to do one time is I said, I'm going to write this next book about disruptive transcendence and technology marketing on my iPad in a Starbucks, roaming around off of my 3G card. And that's how I'm doing it.
Right.
And you're finding that people legitimately can become more mobile. And so all of your business stuff, everything is happening there.
Right. And you bring up an interesting point, which is 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, virtualization was all the rage in the corporate world, so that people like you could be more flexible, but it didn't quite work. And the reason it didn't work is the network simply wasn't as connected and wasn't built out as it is now.
You had a virtual office, you were just tied to a big chain.
Yeah, right. This is talking about how video, and I thought that this would be important for the CEO growth team, and in so much of kind of what we've learned from you guys is with the production and the importance of video, communicating your content through video. It's much easier, it's quicker, and we all know that YouTube and these other tools out there exist, but we don't realize the growth in video that is expected along with this whole mobilization. It's saying a 64% growth of the world's mobile data traffic will be video by 2013, and that has the highest growth rate of any application that was studied by Cisco, video.
But it's if you think about it, it's no surprise. If you look at the statistics that are 2.5%, okay, or 2.5 hours to 4 hours of TV, well, look at exactly what people are doing. They're transferring their TV time into mobile TV time. It's the same stuff.
Right.
Our tendency is to watch and to be entertained. It's how we want to be educated. It's how we want to be entertained. We want that through video. So it makes all the sense in the world that time would be shifting in front of a device in your living room tied to the ability to walk around.
Yeah.
And I do that. I watch Netflix when I'm at the gym and I'm doing stuff on the stair climber. It doesn't matter. You can take that with you and you can do whatever you want.
Right.
So it only makes sense that we're transferring, that's what I'm telling you guys, your standard habits from 10, 20, 30, 50 years ago. We just have new technology to do the same things we've habitually done psychologically forever.
Exactly right. Exactly right. It's well put that it has come full circle. We think sometimes a new technology, it has to end up being something very different. But as we're seeing separately, that this new technology is kind of leading back to the same fundamentals, but perhaps they're viewed differently or accessed differently.
Exactly.
Only difference. Let's see. Okay, this is saying that the advent of mobile is in the process of breaking what they're calling the electricity barrier. I can read Greek, so that's why I can translate this.
It's a very good talent.
Yeah. But what that's saying is that by 2015, there will be more mobile devices worldwide in many areas, not all areas, but it'll begin to happen in many areas than there are people that have access to electricity.
Yeah.
More people will have access to mobile devices in many areas by 2015 than will have access to electricity.
Yeah, it's phenomenal.
That's why we need to think about this in a kind of different way. That's why I'm saying this is kind of a thinking exercise to realize the importance of this. Worldwide, there will be in 2015 about 7 million mobile devices. 7 billion. And there's about 7 billion people on Earth. So that amounts to one per capita, one mobile device for every person on Earth by 2015.
And that's right around the corner.
It's exactly. We're not talking about 2040 or something like that.
Yeah, the future really is here.
Yeah, but it's an absolute explosion of mobilization. So it's kind of gone from being an interesting strategy or a convenience to really something I'll begin to show you. It goes beyond that. So now we're going to kind of switch gears a little bit and look at who is using mobile and why are they? What are some real life examples?
Sure.
Are people actually putting their money behind this, or is it just a cool, a current buzz? One example is very recently, is right there, the Windows 8.
Yep.
Anybody know why that's important for mobilization? Well, as much as Windows might tout all the new features of Windows 8, it's not out yet, but for developers, but one of the things that you'll find very quickly is that it's touchscreen, that it has very much the adaptability to run all of the iPad apps and iPad-like apps. So it really is a response by Microsoft saying that this is where things are going. And even though that's not up front in their marketing of Windows 8, if you look at the details on it, if it walks like a duck, talks like a duck, it is configured for iPads. That kind of is how one of the mainstays of it.
Windows has never really had a significant threat to their OS.
Right.
And mobilization has actually made that threat.
Right.
Because of what's happening, all the applications having nothing to do with, they're all mobile apps.
Yeah.
And so Windows has a major threat. If they don't respond to this, there's going to come a time when people aren't buying PCs and getting the newest version of Windows.
Right.
It just won't, there won't be a reason for it.
Right. There wasn't, I think it was not that long ago, a few years ago, when I recall hearing Bill Gates would not allow his kids to have an iPhone or in the house. And Steve Ballmer was saying, oh, this is a piece of junk, it'll never last. Well, a few years later, tells the
you
whole
can have an
story
iPhone
right
and an iPad, you just can't have one from Apple.
Yeah.
You can have one of our Windows versions.
So understand, if you're resisting this trend, Bill Gates resisted it, and he's come around. His own company is now.
Resistance is futile.
Yeah, right. Google, another big player. They have been known to be almost kind of directly competing with Apple and the iPad and the devices.
Yeah.
With their Android or just their whole virtual apps idea was kind of moving away from being device dependent. In the early part of this year, there was a lot of material, in fact, from Google kind of saying that devices are not the way to go. The way to go is to the cloud and to us.
That's right.
And that was their message. I kind of thought, well, okay, they're taking a very clear track here to go in a different direction. Now, putting your applications on the cloud and virtual apps and things like that are great and wonderful and will definitely be a part of this whole mobilization. Definitely. I'm not saying it's not at all. But what's interesting is that just a short while ago, Google said, in Greek again, I don't know quite why, but they indicated that they have spent $12 billion to acquire Motorola Mobility, kind of a tongue twister, indicating their clear step in investment into mobilization and the device applications as well.
That's right. And the devices, guys, just to understand, the problem I think that happens a lot of times with these organizations is they don't ever go back to standard human psychology. People loved books. They love things. They want to tangibly hold something. There's a personal connection with you and your personal stuff.
Right.
The iPhones and the iPads are their access to everything in the world in a little tiny form like this, or an iPad, or some mobile device that they can personalize. I just brought my 14-year-old daughter to the mall to get her brand new personalized custom cases and skins for her iPhone. We've never been able to do, nobody did that to their PCs.
Right.
You know, it just never happened. And so now they do that. And of course it's a device-ridden thing. We're human beings. We're physical people. So therefore devices will almost without exception always rule out. And sometimes they don't understand that. But Apple has always understood it.
Right. Always. From the inception. eBay was another big player. And recently they have made some significant steps in this direction. Hopefully this will come out in English. 20 minutes. What does that mean? The average time that it takes to do a transaction on eBay, 20 minutes. Think about that. Again, this is kind of a thinking exercise again, and we're stretching your thinking because sometimes we're asking you to think in Greek. So stay with me, or in English, 38 seconds. What's that? Somebody could probably guess. The average time it takes to make a mobile transaction on eBay, 2 minutes to 38 seconds on eBay transaction.
Oh yeah, it's like 20 minutes. You got 20 minutes on your PC, your desktop.
20 minutes, I'm sorry, yeah.
And then 38 seconds. So obviously you're watching people on mobilization making transactions instantaneously.
Right. 20 minutes to 38 seconds.
Absolutely.
In 2010, e-commerce, or m-commerce, the amount of business that eBay did, not online, which we all know they're online, but the amount of business that they did through mobile phones and iPads was $2 billion. It's
a huge, huge amount.
This year,
revenue.
it's $4 billion. So it's doubled just overnight like that. There's another interesting slide. 50 times. 50 times. 50 times what? 50 times. 50 times is the amount that eBay plans to spend on mobile marketing. 50 times their budget. Their VP of Sales said based on the success of the mobile commerce that they are not just doubling or tripling, but they are upping by 50 times. That's 5-0.
Yeah, that's enormous.
That's hard to even comprehend.
Yeah.
So the next point we're going to talk about is productivity a little bit here. Some of this is taken from a press release that ACG did at mid-year about March timeframe, and it basically says that not only is mobilization with iPads exploding in sales, the amount of iPad sales this year was 5 times what any market analyst on Wall Street predicted. So they weren't even close. It surpassed it not by a little bit, but 5 times as much. So we talk about in here how at ACG we're talking about mobilization as not just being a device-oriented strategy, but a fundamental business strategy.
Absolutely.
This has to do with another study that was done comparing workers who are mobilized versus non-mobile workers. So non-mobile workers, they found, had limited access to their company information, were less likely to cooperate with their coworkers in collaboration.
Yeah.
They were would take longer to get back on sales questions and customer service issues and things like that, and it inhibited sales. We found that I don't know why it does that. They found in a mobilized workforce that they are able to collaborate with their peers quicker. They are able to, which makes sense, which they are able to respond to customer requests quicker, and more importantly, and this you'll see at the bottom there where it says 1 to 2 hours, which means they gained 1 to 2 hours of productivity each day. Each day, that's 1 to 2 hours per worker per day. Increase of productivity by just being mobilized, by having access to, if I've got a question, I can log into the company information. We had an example of that at our own company where we host a lot of websites. And if a website is down, it can be a real problem, and we need to know about it. We need to be able to fix it. So sometimes when if we're out of the office or it's after hours or whatever, we had a notification system. But with mobile now, we have been in situations where we've been in meetings off-site, and Jordan, who I think you know, will receive a text message of a server that is down, and he's able on his iPhone to log into our server and fix the problem. that happened once. I was talking among our group, and I noticed one of our fellows was kind of doing this a lot, which they sometimes do anyway. And I said, well, what were you doing? He says, oh, we had a server go down, and I just logged in and fixed it. And so you didn't need to run back to the office, didn't need to do anything. A couple minutes, done. Real life example. These are some benefits to a mobile workforce. Some of them are as a presentation tool, being able to show your website quickly and easily to a client. You can open your website, maybe show them projects, show them work you've done.
Well, we've got a lot of guys around the world right now watching this show on their iPhones and iPads.
Right.
So absolutely.
Next thing is kind of how do we put all this into action? And at ACG, like at CEO, we try to implement some of these things. And we're going to talk about some of the action plans, and I'll even give some suggestions on given all this, what are things that we should be doing, you know? What are some key near-term reasonable action steps that we can do to really begin to address the coming globalization of mobilization and also how to mobilize our own business? What's it all about? That's the question. What should I be doing? What are the important things to do right now? Do I need to, where do I start, really is kind of the question. So here's one application.
Research would be one thing. I mean, just understanding for you guys that are out there, I know in ICE Cable's organization, the distributors and dealers, look at your own clients and say, who is mobile? What kind of devices are they using? What kind of apps are they using? How are they using those? And understanding some of that stuff from your customer standpoint and doing just a small modicum of research would help you understand where guys are going. Because that's what ended up happening in our organization. CEOs are difficult to get to. They don't come to seminars anymore. Quality of life, time is going away. The only thing to do is to get them on their mobile devices because they'll spend that little time while they're there to be able to check things out. That's why we produce this show and we run it mobily. That's the whole reason for doing it, because we finally now get a chance to get broad access to our marketplace, which went away for about 10 years.
Right. And sometimes, you know, you might feel you're a little bit ahead of the curve, but if there's a tsunami coming of mobilization, and there truly is, I believe, worldwide, then we need to be more than just a little bit ahead of the curve, or I can tell you our competitors are going to swamp us. They literally will. In terms of just straight business efficiency. Just straight business efficiency.
And it's going to be, and guys, here's the thing you need to realize. You're competing against people that you can see every single day. What you need to understand is by the way things are happening now, the competitors that will come in when this big thing hits aren't going to be the competitors you're looking at right now. Okay? You look at the competitors to Kmart, it became Walmart, and then Target. But the competitors to them weren't another Walmart or Target. It was eBay. It was Craigslist. It was people like that. People that aren't even in the retail business. People that aren't even in your space. So people are going to come into your space that don't have a background in that because it's easy to hire somebody to figure that out, and they're going to create an infrastructure that's able to collect all of the business that you're not prepared to collect. That's where these major players are coming from. The retail industry is being destroyed by people that have no retail background. They're not building that kind of stuff. They're coming in and looking at this as a business plan and a strategy to create revenue. They don't care about the product. It's not that they won't provide good product and service. It's the technology and the infrastructure that allows the biggest sweep of the revenue. And that's what's happening. We don't have that level of competition anymore. It's not typical people coming up in your space. It's people coming from a very different vantage point. And most of the guys that will take your business, you don't even know who they are now because they're nowhere around.
Right. I saw an interview. It's interesting. As you were talking, I was thinking of some web developers. And many of them said that they were very successful in a couple different areas of opportunity and areas of business. And they noted the fact that while they have figured out the technical solutions to that industry and to that business, that they, at the same time, weren't that concerned about putting up much fresh content, and weren't all that concerned or motivated even to take advantage of the opportunity, even though they had sort of, through technology, kind of broken the combination and kind of broken into that space. They weren't capitalizing it because they didn't really want to. But the point being is that the technology aspect of it certainly it was the key, and they said so. Yet they weren't capitalizing on it because they just were too lazy or whatever it was.
Sure.
But for those of us that are working hard and trying to compete and in crowded spaces and in areas that are very competitive, then, like you say, it behooves us to utilize all the tools at our disposal so that at least our products and services are best represented on the web.
Right.
This is a case study, actually, a couple of them. This is an outline of a physician's information plan. The area right now that is huge in healthcare is called EMR, Electronic Medical Records, and it's part and parcel of how our national healthcare will ultimately, hopefully, take care of all of us and be efficient. And it's predicated, most people don't know, that the legislation is largely predicated on the dependent on implementing technology, and specifically moving from a paper, patient, file-oriented system to electronic medical records, where the doctor can interact with you in the examining room. He can pull up records right there to check your history. If he needs to email another doctor those records to consult with, he could do it right there. I talked to my own physician, who is part of a group at St. Joseph's Hospital, which is a children's hospital, Chalk Hospital of Orange County, and he's on the technology team there, very involved in it, and St. Joseph's is very involved.
Right.
And he says, literally, it's very frustrating because half the time when he sends someone from the office to the hospital, he's not able to inform the hospital or send them any advance records, that when they get there, they kind of have to start all over again.
Right.
And he, as a physician, is extremely frustrated by that, as you can imagine. Imagine yourself in your business, that you're going to send a referral somewhere and they get there and there's nothing there for them and they have to start over. In any business, that would be frustrating. So when it comes to healthcare, it's not only frustrating, but it's life-threatening.
Yeah.
So in the healthcare industry, there's a large movement towards mobilization. We've recently got a lot of calls from doctors based upon this information, actually, that we've put out there, and got specific inquiries about of how I can mobilize my medical practice.
Well, it makes all the difference in the world. You look at people in emergency circumstances. I have a lot of friends that are trauma nurses and EMTs, and with this kind of technology, you've got somebody, and they're in an ambulance. It's so easy to be able to pull that data up, know what's going on, know what you can give them, what you can't give them on the way to the hospital. All this stuff will make all the difference in the world. And one of the things, real quick, guys, you need to remember that mobilization isn't a marketing strategy. It's a business strategy. It's part of your infrastructure.
Right.
And so you're looking at your organization being able to interact with each other. You're looking at your organization being able to interact with the customers, your organization being able to interact with vendors, your organization being able to interact with the marketplace as a whole.
Right.
This is going to be the core of how you build your business. In this new organization, Zeus, that I've launched, mobilization is the core of everything that we're doing because of that connectivity all the way across the board. Okay?
Very key. This diagram actually is a patient, is a flow of an anesthesiologist practice, where here are his servers and his core documents that he needs to run the practice with, many of which are still on paper. Here we have patient information that he takes regularly, and then here is what we can kind of provide in terms of a segmented portion of the critical needed data that's timely, that's needed for that moment. We don't have to pull up the entire database, is the point. You can pull up what you need,
Right.
and then it's easily delivered to his iPad. Literally, there's physicians that have said, I can't wait for the hospital, I can't wait for the organization or clinic I'm involved with. Many doctors are going ahead and getting iPads and iPhones on their own, even though sometimes it's contradictory to the systems that their medical practice
Sure.
are associated with or using, because they feel that they have to. New medical students at UCI in Irvine are all being given iPads to start their medical education.
Yeah.
So they want to start them right there so that by the time they graduate, they are familiar with the tools and familiar how it works. So it's touching every area of our lives, and as you can see in many of these areas, in very positive ways, because it still gets back to trying to find the best way to do the traditional thing, which
Sure.
is doctors just want to take care of their patients. They
Right.
just want the information to make a good diagnosis. How can you make a good diagnosis if you don't have the information? How can you make a good marketing strategy? How can you make a good business decision if you don't have the information at your fingertips? How can your person in the field make a decision on what to do with the customer if they can't dial in and check the records of that customer if they need to? That can make the difference between keeping or losing a customer. They make the difference between making or losing the sale.
Absolutely.
So this is one for iPadization for electronic medical records that Chris at our company has been very involved with in terms of working with the doctors and trying to understand their needs. And it's something that is definitely close to these doctors because they recognize the importance of it. So that's kind of one area where ACG is trying to take our own message and
Yep.
implement it and put it to good use with the clients that we're dealing with. Another example, I'll use our own Cody Zine here, where he has an upcoming or a project called the Ark, which I believe is being filmed in Greece right now, right? And it's an awesome project, and he's kind of taking a different approach towards getting promoting it and making it become a reality through mobilization, through his own website, through putting out information in videos and other things that he shared with us that are kind of a different way of marketing, of promoting, of launching a movie production. And at the heart of it, again, is mobilization.
Right.
So you have the core information and he has a website, but how do you link it to make it accessible, more accessible on mobile devices? How do you set it up so that it can be easily shared on social media? And social media, by the way, is not something I think that is going away or to be diminished, but it's simply we need to shift our thinking in that it's not something that we probably ends up being a marketplace to sell stuff or to push our services or to sell our products.
Yeah.
It's simply more of a communication means to sort of get the word out.
And I think what happens is technology has always been, I think, remiss in their positioning of things like social media, SEO, web, so on and so forth. They don't understand that they take that kind of material and they put it here at the core of the business. It's not the core of the business. Mobilization is the core infrastructure of an organization going forward. Social media is out to the side. It's a finger of or a support mechanism. Right. It's not the core business structure, which we sometimes try to make it out to be.
Right.
It's just one of.
Right.
The critical core piece of it are things like mobilization.
Right.
That is your business strategy,
Right.
your business structure.
But what's interesting is we saw in some of the earlier slides with social media is that, yes, you can use social media, but very soon, if you have a social media strategy, but you're not implementing it through a mobile device, it's going to get diminished. It's going to get overshadowed by mobile social media, just as a communication system.
Exactly.
So it's linked again. So with this, we have the upcoming ARC movie and a strategy to incorporate the beautiful artwork and to begin to perhaps distribute information, plot lines, maybe teasers, information that would whet the appetite of all of us that love movies to begin to see it come to reality. So another real case example where we're kind of doing the things that we're talking about,
Sure.
in this case with Cody and the ARC.
Fantastic.
Cool, huh? And then our own CEO growth team, again, putting up at the top of the list of have a great website, update the website, good content, keep it fresh. I think it looks great. We do websites, and I love their website.
You know, it's interesting, when we were talking about this originally months ago, talking about mobilization, you guys were coming at it from one point, we were coming at it from another point. You happened to be here, and it happened to be the topic that
Right.
we all just started talking about,
Right.
and then it turned into a big training, and we had known through everything that was going on statistically that video is the most prominent thing. And when we were talking about creating these mobile sites and video being the #1 display at the top, which it is for all these things, it was so evident when we kind of arrived at that exact same conclusion, because it's what we were doing but had never solidified it into a formalized plan. And it really does make all the difference in the world. And if you look at the standard type of mobile websites and mobile things, when it's all said and done, the very things that they're pushing are not the very things that are growing in usage, which in this case, with what we're doing together and the way that you guys build these apps and strategically the way they're positioned, it is in alignment with what the consumers are wanting and the trends that are driving right now, i.e. that video push being so rampant.
Right, exactly. And in collaboration with your team and kind of building this particular app, it helped us learn. And one of the first things you guys asked us was, we want the video at the top and core training videos right at the top. And we're kind of like, okay, that's probably a good idea. Little did I know that, you know, as we kind of get more familiar and kind of oriented and acclimated to this, that that the information a few earlier in the presentation indicated that mobile video is the fastest application in terms of growth.
Yeah.
And this was an application done by Cisco, analyzing all the millions and millions and billions of amount of information that flows through their systems, of saying the one application that surpasses all of them is mobile video. Mobile video. So again, you guys were ahead of us on that. Maybe we're a little ahead on the technology, but as it began to come together, it just makes we just happen to be at the right time at the right place.
It kind of dovetailed perfectly on that day, and you're looking at most mobile sites that are completely devoid of the strategy that capitalizes on the fastest growing segment of mobile application.
Right, right. Yeah. Sorry.
So that's kind of where we're at. So you're seeing that, I mean, like you're talking about, this stuff is going into regular, everyday, diverse different types of organizations,
Right.
from film to medical and physicians and doctor-patient relationships to technology infrastructure and organizations to training companies to design firms to everything.
Right. So what I'd like to do is offer a couple of brief things that kind of summarize what you might do. Given all of this, sometimes it can be overwhelming. It's been overwhelming for us sometimes to figure out, with all the technology out there, we're inundated with new technology. Our job is kind of sorting it all out and trying to find the applications that actually will work best for a given customer, and each customer is different. Each client, each business is different. So it's a challenge for all of us to figure out what we should do. So here's 5 simple things that I would suggest for any business to just take some steps in. The first one is appoint someone to focus on mobile. Simple as that. If it's everybody's job to do that, it won't get done. If it's only the CEO's job to do that, If you have time, great. But appoint someone to focus and keep an eye and look into and begin to get familiar with this area. Very key step. A company that doesn't do that is like the Titanic without a lookout. You know, even though it didn't do any good, there is an avalanche coming towards us. And we have to keep an eye on it. Even we do as a technology company, because we realize if we take a left turn and the market is going right, we could be hit just as hard anyway. How many technology companies have been left behind in the wreckage of history because they maybe made the wrong technology choice?
Well, we did, you know, that was a strategy for years in medieval times and just about every time before technology really started to advance. But small and mid-sized businesses are famous for not having the watchman.
Yeah.
They just don't, and they need to get back to that, to where you've got somebody that's sitting at the top watching for advancements.
Right. And if you're watching, what are you watching? We're suggesting watch mobile, because that's what's coming. Simple step that I think we all can do. Second thing is budget for mobilization. Going into next year, you should have a budget for this area. It's like not having a financial plan. It's like not having any strategy. Going into it empty-handed is not what you want to do. So having a simple budget, whatever it would be, towards this area will help your organization immensely, because for one, that crystallizes the focus. You could say, well, we have somebody on it, but that person or that organization has no budget. Well, they won't be on it very long. You don't want that. So keep them focused by putting it in the budget somehow, some way. Next is determine what areas of your business could perhaps most benefit from this. Not all areas, every business is different.
Sure.
There might be a key area that would be particularly helpful for your area to mobilize. Maybe if you have, if you're a service organization, you have techs that end up going out and maybe reviewing or assessing damage or assessing situations and need to make decisions. If they're autonomous, fine. If they need to check with the office, great opportunity for an iPad or an iPhone to be able to link back to the office.
Worst case scenario, your sales and marketing efforts.
So having those key areas, and I would suggest start in one or two, not all, so that you can begin to kind of manage that implementation and learn from it, and you will learn from it. We have done the same thing as I described. We had a situation where sometimes we weren't notified if we would have technical outages. We do outage management for some utility companies, so it's beholden on us to know. But we found that there were some gaps in that knowing, so that was a perfect example for us to implement a very specific mobile strategy, which we did, and which solved the problem right away. We didn't have a day go by, we didn't have customers upset. It never happened because it was prevented by having the mobilization applied in the right situation.
Right.
The next is mobilize your website, as we've talked about. Simple thing to do. It's not a push button where you take a given site and you just push a button, it's mobilized. It takes a little bit of thought to figure out how you want your navigation to be organized, like you saw. It's not hard. It's a lot easier than doing a whole website. You sometimes only need to do a portion of your website, but it should be geared towards one thing: them getting a hold of you.
Yeah.
So call to action, phone, click to call, click to send an email, click to send a form, click for directions. That's what people do. When you're on a mobile device, you shouldn't be on it very long if you're driving, but if you're headed to the doctor or dentist and you pull up their website and you're lost, as we helped, in fact, the dentist next door, that was kind of his question. People are on the way and they can't find us. So we put right at the top of his mobilization list, click to find us.
That's why your marketing and sales strategies on your mobile site are so critical, and why we've built the strategies and the templates on how to effectively create very powerful mobile websites and the use of video, because it allows people to get the messages without having to read. We were talking about people driving a lot. I know we're going to cut out in about 2-3 minutes, but driving a lot, which we would prefer that they don't do that, but they're going to do that.
Right.
And so that being said, if you've got video, worst case scenario, if they're doing that, they can put the phone down and they can listen, but you have the ability to work through that. And we've created those strategies to really dynamically create mobile sites that are effective and get people to call and get people to come in and make transactions.
So call to action is at the top of the list. Put your best foot forward, like on the CEO Growth Team. At the top of the list is training videos, the information and training that you do so well in the vehicle, a video. Combine those two things. That was your decision right at the top. That's your business right at the top. So whatever that would be for your business. And the last and not least is video. Which thankfully is being part of the CEO Growth Team. You have wonderful access to having professionally produced and edited videos. So this would be the top 5 things that any business can do. These are not hard. They're simple, straightforward steps. Number 1, assign somebody to it. Number 2, get a budget assigned to it. Number 3, figure out a way where to start. Number 4, get your website mobilized. And number 5, take advantage of showcasing your great business and all the work that goes into it on video. What better way?
And guys, before we cut out, I want to thank you, Lee, for coming and sharing the information. We Alliance Together, these guys are a phenomenal organization that leads the field technologically in this and many, many other areas. But we're producing a full-day seminar about mobilization, from the core components of the business of mobilization to the marketing side of things, where we not only go through this information in more detail, but we talk about the strategies and we actually build the infrastructure strategically of your mobile marketing, advertising, and sales formats. You actually walk away with the ability to produce it, whether you go to somebody else and produce that or you have us do it for you in the organization and Lee and Chris's organization, ACG. Either way, it doesn't matter, but you've got to be to that particular form. We're going to do the first one this next coming month in October, and you will walk away knowing exactly what you're supposed to do, what these call to actions are supposed to be, what the video content is supposed to be, what the strategy is supposed to look like in a mobile structure in your organization, from marketing the website to just everything under the sun. It's probably the only seminar workshop format of this kind in existence. And we do it right here in the studio, so it's a limited amount of people that can be here. It's about 15 to 20, so we'll post some information on that and get it to you. But Lee, thanks for coming, and guys, we appreciate you tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Thanks so much.